When I was a kid, I loved in the evenings turning on the TV and going on Nick at Night to watch reruns of sitcoms, especially from the 1990s. And one of my favorite sitcoms, probably maybe one of the most famous from the 90s, was called The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So the show that got, for the younger generations, that got Will Smith famous. It was a fun show, West Philadelphia, born and raised. Seeing Carlton dance to Tom Jones, the witty one-liners from Jeffrey the Butler. But my favorite character of that show wasn't Will. It was actually the father of the family, Philip Banks, lovingly known as Uncle Phil. And one of the most serious and heartbreaking episodes of that show, most of the time the show was funny, but they would go deep sometimes, was when Will's deadbeat father, Lou, shows back up in his life, tries to have a relationship with him, tries to win him over. Will is convinced that he's changed, but Uncle Phil knows better. He sees right through the guy. And the episode ends with Lou abandoning him again, this time as an adult. But before he runs out on him, Uncle Phil gives him a dressing down, justifiably so. He tells him, now that you're back, you have responsibilities. He's not here for you. You're here for him. And of course, Lou, in his insecurity, tries to justify himself. He says, get off my back. You think I want this? It just happened. When Will was a baby, I was scared. And that's all he can say when Uncle Phil just stands up straight and says, cut it. All right? Because I've been there. But I didn't run out of my family. I was there every day for them, because that's what a man does. Lou walks out, and Will, with tears in his eyes, looks at Uncle Phil and says, how come he doesn't want me? And all Uncle Phil does is wraps his arms around his nephew. Will has discovered his true father. That's what fatherhood is. It's a life that is sacrificial. The father is a victim. Not a victim as, hey, who can participate in the oppression Olympics? Who can score more points there? But he gives himself up. He lays down his life for his children, his domestic flock. And it's thanks to the victimhood of the father of a household that a man studying to be a priest has an example. Preparing for priesthood, I firmly believe that what you can say about a good father, you can say the same thing about a good priest. I go back to Rome this September. It's going to be a very bittersweet goodbye. But once I go back, I only have 9 months. 9 months before the church makes me a father to her children. Am I ready? No. But is any man ready to become a dad? You can read the books, you can watch the videos, you can talk to dads, just like with the priesthood, but you won't know until you actually experience it. When you have this life that is so dependent on you. When you go from being a husband to dad. When a man becomes a father, he's no longer himself. He no longer lives for himself. There's a life dependent on him. And Christ today, we're seeing Christ as a father. Usually it's kind of odd to hear Jesus Christ associated with fatherhood because, well, he's the Son. That's true. He is God the Son, and there's God the Father. But time and again in the Gospels, Jesus shows himself to be a father to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, eventually to the Gentiles, to the whole world. Here it's said that he is filled with pity. His heart is moved with pity for these children, sheep without a shepherd. In some translations, it's not filled with pity, but he's filled with compassion. Cum passio in Latin, which means to suffer with. Every fiber of his being wants to suffer with all of us. To be with his flock, to be with his children. And he's not alone in this. Jesus is never alone because he's always in communion with his Father. But he also ordained men with father-like authority to guide, to heal, to preach, and to suffer. His apostles, the first bishops, in communion with Peter, the first pope, Papa, Father, all the way down to Archbishop Sample, our local shepherd, and by that extension, the priests he ordains, God willing, next year. And the dad of a family is called to do the same thing for the domestic church, his family. And this could be a dad as a biological father, an adopted father, or some sort of father-like figure, teacher, coach, whoever. All boys are called to grow up to become fathers in some way. Called to be a good Catholic man, to be an inspiring model for his children, for his domestic flock, and to serve the kingdom. And looking out here now, it's so inspiring to see all the dads who are here. Thank you for being here. Thank you for modeling to all of us and to your children how important the faith is. My dad is right there. In our faith, we need good, authentic, masculine examples in the church. Does toxic masculinity exist out there? Yes. Do they make the most noise? Yes. Are they the majority? No. They are not the majority. And they are not the good examples. In a culture today that there just seems to be this very sinister attack on men, on boys, on fatherhood. I was reading an article recently where the author wrote how even in media, men seem to be portrayed as dumbed down or they're dismissed, lacking in some sort of sympathy, no love there. Look at Homer Simpson and Peter Griffin. Terrible examples for a father. Not Uncle Phil, though. Biological fathers, adoptive fathers, spiritual fathers are all being accused of being part of this totalitarian boogeyman called the patriarchy. That somehow being a man means being toxic. That's not what a real man is. And outside of original sin and the working of the enemy, I don't know why that's the case. Maybe it's simply hurt people. Because there are many men out there and here right now, today, who work hard. They protect and provide for their families while asking for little, so little, no cost. Putting it very lightly, not everyone had or has or grew up with a good father, biological or spiritual. And that's why it's so important for men to demonstrate the tender, protective, providing care of a father, like St. Joseph, and the sacrificial father, Jesus Christ. For example, my family did some digging on our family history, particularly on my father's side of the family. And we made a discovery that my great-grandfather, Ricardo Echeverria, was the illegitimate child of a wealthy landowner in Puerto Rico. This man, my great-great-grandfather, didn't claim him, rejected him, didn't love him. And my great-grandfather made certain decisions in his own life that weren't good. And I wonder what would have happened if it was flipped. That this man, whoever his biological father was, took him in, raised him as his own, and loved him. Might have made a world of difference. We live in a broken reality. That's just the fact of life. I knew a heartbreaking story, and this actually makes my blood boil, of a priest. I knew of a priest who mocked a child when I was growing up. That's putting it lightly, because there are worse things that happened. This is when you see priests who are divorced from the reality of fatherhood. This priest, who should have known better, was acting very immature, very sophomoric. He made fun of a kid who's over something so petty. This child, he was a couple grades lower than I was, he simply wanted to receive the Eucharist on the tongue. No song and dance, no judgment towards other people, he just wanted to receive that way. And the priest made fun of him for that, openly mocked him. That's unacceptable. Do you think that family stayed in the parish? No, they left. That's an example of somebody who wasn't a father or a real man, a man-child maybe. Whatever happened to that priest, I don't know. But that boy, I do know that he grew up, he got married, and now he's a father. And he's a good father. Comes from a good Catholic home. Fatherhood is important. And fathers, all fathers and father figures, were given a special vocation in being called to image God the Father, Abba, in Aramaic and in Hebrew. Abba doesn't mean father, like George Washington, the father of our country. It means dad. So when we're saying, our Father who art in heaven, we're saying our dad. It's a personal relationship, a very personal relationship that you wouldn't have with, Zeus or Thor, but with Abba. And our lives, according to Pope Francis, are that of what he calls a filial existence, which means that basically every single person here, our existence is rooted in our sonship and daughterhood. We are all beloved sons and daughters of Abba. He wants to be with us, just like he was with the freed Hebrew slaves in the wastelands, in the desert, with the Jews of first century Palestine and the Gentiles, and with all of us. When a boy grows up, he's called to be an Abba, and we need that desperately in this culture, amidst these attacks. I have to tell you all, I am so excited to become a priest. 1 year. I cannot wait. I'm getting a glimpse of it, learning from Monsignor Cihak, from Archbishop Sample, from many good, holy men, and also the men here in the parish. One of my favorite parts of being here with all of you this pastoral year has been being invited to your homes to experience the domestic church and to observe and draw inspiration from the priest of that domestic church, the father. What can I learn from so-and-so, and so-and-so, and so-and-so? A lot. And I've learned a whole lot, and I look forward to learning more. Thank you to all the men here for your vocation as Abba, as dads. Good models. Masculinity and fatherhood are not toxic. They are gifts. They are gifts to the church, and they should be promoted and celebrated. And this isn't me saying this. A woman named Sister Miriam said that. It's a gift for all of us. I'm not ashamed of having a father. And maybe some here didn't have a father. Well, actually, you do. You have Abba, you have Monsignor. There you go. You got fathers right there. And many others. About a month ago, I was emceeing a confirmation mass for Archbishop Sample. Now the flip side of what good fatherhood looks like. In the reception line, everyone was greeting Archbishop Sample, getting a photo with him, or maybe a high five, or just wanted to talk to him. He's a good man. But at the very end, a young girl with Down syndrome just ran towards him. And I was observing and thinking, how's this going to go? Do you know what the successor to the apostles, our shepherd, did? He got down on his knees and he gave her a big old hug. He embraced her, showed her that she was loved. That's our bishop. I'm going to be ordained by that man. He is such a good father. He even refers to the seminarians, not just as my guys or my seminarians, but he calls us my sons. That's our bishop. Please pray for him on this Father's Day. Even my own dad, he was a big Beatles fanatic growing up. So when I was very, very little, I loved when he would sing me to sleep. He liked to sing Beautiful Boy by John Lennon. And he changed the lyrics a little bit to fit my name, and when my sister was around, her name too. Like, those were the fathers I had in my life, the spiritual and the biological, where I knew I was going to be okay. I was safe. There's even a beautiful line in that song that I always remember. I can hear my dad even singing it now. It's the monster's gone, he's on the run, and your daddy's here. Beautiful boy. I can't wait to model that in the priesthood, because we're being taught, I'm celibate. I'm not a bachelor. I'm a husband. I'm going to be a dad in a year. That's really being honed in on seminarians now. Though, about a month and a half ago, I got a glimpse. I got just a little feel of that experience of what fatherhood of the priest is going to look like. So, I was at Coffee and Donuts, and one of our students named Keegan came over to me, and she brought her little brother with her. He's about maybe 2, 3 years old, and they'll correct me after Mass. And she just said, "Do you want Deacon to hold you?" And who am I? I'm the deacon, I'm not that important. And he just looked at me and went, and so I picked him up, held him right here, and that feeling, one word came to my mind: fatherhood. This is the fatherhood of the priest. This is what it's going to feel like. And it was only further affirmed when she said, as she was observing us, 5 words I will not forget, and it stuck with me. I remember that whole week I was like, whoa, did that just happen? 5 words. "You look like a dad." For any man studying to be a priest, that's music to our ears. That is music to our ears. We're fathers and husbands in a spiritual way. And thank you for praying for all of us, so that we have a fighting chance in this world to be your priests, to be, hopefully, good fathers to all of you. And please continue to pray for us. And I hope that more young men from this parish, to echo Monsignor from last week, become good, sacrificial, spiritual fathers. Looking out here now, there's a lot of potential. A lot of good men who would make amazing priests. To provide the world with the Eucharist, because without priests, there is no Eucharist. In the Eucharist is found the authentic, masculine, sacrificial fatherhood. Jesus never did his own thing, always in communion with Abba. He let his heart be pierced. He suffered with his people. He let nails be pounded into his flesh. And instead of like a spoiled child saying, "Dad, take care of it, destroy them," he said in his native tongue, "Abba, shvachot dileitin imon tiltin." Dad, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. In the Eucharist today, pray for our fathers, all fathers, and pray, please pray, for an increase of authentic masculine fatherhood in all men and in all priests, because we need them. Amen.